G'day guys! There is no denying that the Arks of Omen supplement has brought a whole bunch of different changes to the Chaos Space Marines, and one of the biggest changes that people are upset about is that the Creations of Bile now only fight on death on a roll of a 4+. People think this is a huge nerf to Creations of Bile, but I'm here to tell you that it's not as bad as it might sound on face value, and that the Creations of Bile are still, hands down, one of the most OP factions in the game. So let's talk about the new way that you need to play Creations of Bile, some things that you need to consider with Creations of Bile, given these new changes in Arks of Omen.
Blood for the Black God!
Alrighty guys, so the main thing that's changed obviously is that you now only fight on death on a 4+, but I think what people are misunderstanding is they're viewing that from their lens, and they're going, oh, now I'm only going to do it half as often, or I'm only going to do it sometimes, and I'm not going to be able to control when, so that feels bad. But the thing that you need to consider is that your opponent is looking at it through the lens of, Jesus, if I charge that thing, there's a 50% chance that when I kill it, it's going to fight me on death. So if you invert it and look from your opponent's perspective, you'll realize that they aren't likely to be prepared to gamble that 50-50. So as a result, they're going to have to approach the game in effectively the same way that they did previously. And what I mean by this is often you'd have multiple combats on the go at once, right? And that was always really bad to do when you're versing Creations of Bile, because you know that if you fight here first, they're going to fight on death and kill you, then they're going to spend the command points to interrupt and kill you over there, and you're going to lose all your shit. So as a result, the decision to engage Creations of Bile in multiple combats was always a risky one. Or things like wielding something to force them to fight last wasn't that effective into Creations of Bile because they were going to fight you on death anyway. So you had to sort of reposition the way that you played the game against Creations of Bile, and it created a real headache for your opponent. And the thing is fighting on death on a 4+ still has that same effect, especially given that it's on a model by model basis. So if they charge your Chosen, for example, you got a big unit of 10 Chosen, you're still going to fight on death with half of them, right? On average math, you're still going to fight on death with 5 of those Chosen. And if they throw in a small unit, you're still going to get the same net result, right? You're still going to kill that unit that just fought you, because they're going to kill your Chosen, but then you're going to kill them back, right? So you end up with the same net result, whether you fight on death on a 4+, or whether you just flat out fight on death. Obviously, there are some things like where, maybe they throw a knight into you, and you would have needed to fight back on death with the entire unit of Chosen to kill the knight, whereas now you're only likely to be fighting on death with half. Or things like your character, your Disco Lord, he's now half of the time, he's just not going to fight on death. So yes, it is a nerf, but the point that I'm sort of trying to get at here is that if you look at it from your opponent's perspective, they can't rely on this nerf taking effect. They have to build their game plan around assuming that you're just going to roll all your 4-ups. They're going to charge the Disco Lord and kill him, sure, but they have to plan for the worst case scenario, because that's how you win games, right? You figure out, if all the dice go against me, what happens? Do I still win? If you do, well then that's a solid plan. Whereas if the dice go against you and you lose, you need to revisit your plan and come up with a different plan, because you can't just leave your fate to the dice, right? That's how top tier players look at the game. And if they're going into a Creations of Bile army, and they're like, cool, I'm going to charge that Disco Lord and that Demon Prince and this unit of Chosen, they have to worry about it, because they have to assume that you're going to roll the 4-up on your Demon Prince, you're going to roll the 4-up on your Disco Lord, because 2 4-ups is not an unreasonable thing to happen, right? And then that Chosen unit, you're going to roll out of the 10 dice, maybe you roll 4 or 5, maybe 3 or 4, because you got lucky on the Demon Prince, maybe you get slightly unlucky there. But either way, they go, okay, cool. Assuming that happens, which is a very reasonable outcome to expect, what does that mean for my game plan? And they're gonna hate it. They're gonna be like, I can't risk it. So they're gonna have to do all the same janky stuff that they had to do previously in order to beat Creations of Bile. They still have to do, even with this nerf in effect. So I actually think Creations of Bile got off way light. I was worried they were going to get like the Harlequins treatment where they do mortal wounds on death or something like that. But The fact that they still get to fight on death and they just have to roll a 4 up to do it, that's not a problem at all. It's a slight nerf. And the other thing to consider is that the shift in the meta in this, new season is hugely advantageous for Creations of Bile. For example, there's tons more Marines around, and the Creations of Bile secondary awards you an additional victory point if you kill Marines, which is really, really obviously strong. But also, it scores you tons of victory points for killing non-vehicle units, which is what all these new Space Marine lists are going to be. There's everyone talking about Plasma Inceptors, Terminators, just all the different Primaris stuff, Aggressors, That's all perfect field for Creations of Bile to just run through and just rack up tons of specimens for the Bile point, So that's their secondary got way stronger, even though it didn't change. Because of the way that the meta has shifted, those Creations of Bile lists are now going to be even crazier. And further to that, Legionaries now getting all of that free war gear means that you've got a Power Fist on the Sergeant that you don't have to pay for. You've got a heavy Chain Axe in the unit, which you don't have to pay for, which now means when your Legionaries are fighting on death, they're way more scary than they were. So a Creations of Bile list that has a shit ton of Mark of Khorne Legionaries with all of these melee weapons is terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. So Creations of Bile got way stronger in my opinion. Even though they got that nerf, I think the broader meta makes them way stronger. We don't have to deal with Tyranids anymore. Tau are going to become even less relevant and less prevalent, and Marines are going to become more prevalent. So this is a huge buff to Creations of Bile. It's not a nerf in the way that most people are viewing it. I think this is a huge buff for the Creations of Bile. Not to mention, their +1 strength army-wide means that those Legionaries, if you took them as Mark of Slanesh or Mark of Nurgle or whatever, they're now wounding Marines on 3 up because their toughness, they're strength 5 now, And then if you make them Mark of Khorne, they go to strength 6. And then if you put, mutated invigoration on them, they go to strength 7, which means even if your Marines are bringing, big toughness 5, toughness 6 models, you're like, cool, I don't care. Boom, you're dead, So bring in those I think that the play here is going to be lots of Mark of Khorne Legionaries because they're strength 6, and there's a lot of people talking about Aggressors, the Primaris, all the Gravis Armor stuff, because it's all T5, which makes it really good. But if you can go, cool, well, I'm going to predict that meta shift. I'm going to predict that that's what everyone's going to do because everyone's like, oh my god, it's going to be raining Marines. Well, okay, if it's going to be raining Marines, let's bring a Creations of Bile umbrella and just fucking get it done, So I'm very excited for what Creations of Bile are going to do. And I think the next level to this, and I may have ruined it a little bit by having this video out there, but people are not going to be expecting Creations of Bile. The general consensus online is that Creations of Bile have been nerfed, so therefore people are going to be like, oh cool, I can bring combat heavy lists now, because I don't have to, not every fucking second or third list is going to be Creations of Bile, so they're going to bring Blood Angels, they're going to bring Space Wolf combat lists, they're going to bring Dark Angels combat lists, all these Terminators and stuff, and they're going to be like, yeah, cool, but you're like, cool, you send Terminators into me, my Legionaries have a fuck ton of AP2, Strength 6 weapons that are fighting on death on a 4-up. That's so good. And then the plus movement, the ability to advance and charge on them, the really strong secondaries. I think Creations of Bile are, even after this supposed nerf, have come out stronger than they were before. Yes, they got a nerf. Yes, they lost Armor of Contempt. Yes, their Terminators got more expensive, all of this stuff. But they never cared about Abaddon because Creations of Bile lists generally didn't run him because if he killed things, they didn't count towards your specimens for the, Bile secondary. So often they didn't bring Abaddon, so they didn't lose anything there. Their Terminators were not necessarily the ideal to run them either because the Terminators were a durable unit. Creations of Bile is all about killing things, not about surviving. So multiple units of Chosen is much more powerful, and multiple units of Possessed are much more powerful for a Creations of Bile list. And now those Possessed, strength 6, with a increased movement from Creations of Bile. Those Chosen going in, really, really powerful. You can get them, they got strength 5 of cursed weapons, strength 6 for being Creations of Bile, strength 7 for being a fucking Mark of Khorne. And then you can go on top of that, mutated invigoration, you can end up with strength 8. And now they're wounding all these Marines on 2s, So Creations of Bile are fucked. they're going to be fucking hard to deal with. A couple of units are chosen with Mark of Khorne to go in, maybe one with Marcus Lanesh and Black Rune. It's a little bit more expensive on the Marcus Lanesh, but that means you've got one Anvil unit that's going to have a Dolite for Agonies, it's going to have the Toughness 5 potentially from Mutated Invigoration, it's going to have the Neg 1 to Wound, it's going to function in a very durable way. And then the other one as Mark of Khorne, put those cunts in some rhinos, and now you can launch them out, you can do various things with them. Then a bunch of MSU Legionaries with all of the melee weapons, and they're advancing and charging out of rhinos, they're tagging objectives, they're fighting on death half of the time. That's going to be scary as fuck to verse. And then you've got your characters as well that are still really powerful. And also, the Creations of Bile have that Warlord trait, Twisted Invigoration, or Mutated Invigoration, I can't remember what it's called. Basically, when it dies, instead of fighting on death, you can bring it back to life. Well, it doesn't say that you need to roll for that, so you still get to bring him back to life. So that's on a 2-up, I think it is. So that's really, really powerful too. So a lot of the powerful tools that Creations of Bile had access to previously, they still have access to. They still do massive damage. They still have fast units. And on top of all of this, they are now better into the meta than they were previously. So I implore you to try not to read too much about what you hear on the internet, because there's a lot of people that are not faction masters, they're not specialists in this faction, and they just see, oh, Creations of Bile went from auto fighting on death to fighting on death on a 4+. They see that as a 50% decrease in effectiveness in that front, and then they go, well, that's bad. Now it's up to dice, you can't rely on dice, and that's bad. But that's just not how it works. So I just wanted to do a quick video with you guys and just talk about this, because I think it's something that's being massively overlooked, and I think it's an opportunity for Chaos players to bring those really powerful units and still do the massive damage and still catch your opponent off guard, catch them slipping when they go, cool, I'm going to throw something into Disco Lord, and you're like, yeah, well, there's a 50% chance that's going to fucking suck for you. Like, they can't. You can't throw something away to a 50%, so they actually still have to play all that same shenanigans that they had to do before in order to try to circumnavigate that Creations of Bile problem. So the problem is still very real in their eyes. So remember that when you're playing a game, that your opponent has to make these difficult decisions. We've actually just made it harder for them, because previously they just knew you were going to fight on death. So they just did the thing. Whereas now that it's a 50% chance, it's actually harder for them, because instead of going, okay, that will fight on death, so therefore I won't charge it. Now they have to go, oh, fuck. There's a 50-50 chance. I mean, maybe if I hit it and maybe I kill the Legionaries and maybe the heavy chain axe guy doesn't get the 4-up, but it's just a couple chain swords. It's not that big of a deal, Oh, and then they have to waste time, and they have to waste mental bandwidth, and they have to stress about trying to solve this new challenge that previously they didn't have to try to solve. So this is massive. This is actually a huge buff for Creations of Bile if it's piloted well, and the meta does develop the way that everybody's expecting, which is that it's going to be a very marine heavy meta. If those things are true, well, then Creations of Bile just got a massive glow up. Not to mention people are talking about Custodes coming back. Well, Creations of Bile are good into Custodes because they're all toughness 5 everywhere, yay! And it's like, yeah, well, cool, we'll wear strength 6, yay! So and the AP on them is good. So yeah, Mark of Khorne, Legionaries, chosen. It's going to be sick. So yeah, I just wanted to share that with you guys. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you think that this is the end of Creations of Bile, or do you think I've made some good points here and that we actually still have some play? Let me know. If you were versing Creations of Bile, how would you feel going into somebody who's going to fight on death half the time? It's obviously, not as powerful as it was, but let me know if you think it still has that feeling when you're versing it of fear and dread about what could happen if your opponent rolls well, I'd love to have a conversation in the comments below. And as always, please like, subscribe, comment, all that good shit. And if you would like to enter the competition to win a 3D printed Angron model, make sure you head over to our Patreon. You can sign up for as low as $4 a month, which is only $1 a week, so it's really cheap, and that'll automatically enter you into the draw. And then, at the end of the month, I'll be drawing it. Apparently, the World Eaters Codex is coming out on the 11th of February, so my plan will be to draw it towards the end of January, so that I have time to post it out and you'll receive it before the Codex even drops, which means you'll have the model, you'll be able to paint it up before the Codex is in your hands, And that way, the second you do get the codex, you can hit the table running. You can start playing straight away. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, and I will see you guys in the next one. Cheers.
Blood for the Black God!
The Warhammer community suffers from some of the most prohibitively expensive essentials in the world, especially Australian content creators. Every single day, Dean wants to create content, but he can't. Suffering from old, worn-out brushes, expensive model kits, and costly software and equipment he can't endure much longer. Just look at this dirty paint water. Would you drink this? Would you let your child? Even a small monthly donation can help provide Dean with clean paint water, basic tools for survival, and access to life-saving information and education. So please, follow the links in the description below and find out how you can sponsor a mad cunt like Dean today and end the suffering. Suffering that is cruel, unsustainable, and your fault.
Do your objective markers ever get lost behind terrain or other models and become difficult to see? Do they ever get bumped and accidentally moved during a game? And do they ever spark arguments about distances? Well, not anymore. Introducing the blog for the Blood God, not even remotely patented neoprene objective markers. Made from the same material as astronaut suits, or maybe military equipment, or probably neither of those things, this 2mm thick neoprene synthetic rubber is tear resistant, water resistant, and is designed to last. But that's not all. The blog for the Blood God, not even remotely patented neoprene objective markers come in a variety of different designs and styles to suit any faction represented in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. These objective markers are a perfect gift for yourself or a friend, and are a perfect way to flex and show your opponent that not only are you a smarter, cooler, and better 40k player than them, but you also have more disposable income than they do. For the low price of $25, you'll get not one, not two, but 6 neoprene objective markers, perfectly designed for 9th edition Warhammer 40k. But wait, there's more. For a limited time only, people who sign up on Patreon to support Blog for the Blood God as a Skull Champion tier $5 per month member will gain access to a custom design service where I will design a unique logo to support their gaming club, like the one I did to the left here for the Potato Farmers local gaming club here in Melbourne. Follow the links in the description of this video to pick up your set today.